The Academy's main lecture hall hummed with quiet chatter as cadets settled into their seats. Sunlight filtered through the wide observation windows, casting soft golden beams across the polished floors and the metal-framed chairs. Some cadets tapped impatiently on their holopads, others whispered about the upcoming simulations, and a few practiced the formal drills they would be tested on later. At the very back row, sitting slightly to the side where she could observe without being noticed, was Lyra Dane. Her posture was relaxed, almost lazy, but her eyes swept the hall constantly, analyzing every movement, every detail. She said nothing. She never volunteered for questions or raised her hand. She did not laugh at jokes, nor did she join in the whispers that traveled like faint currents between groups. To most, she seemed quiet, shy, maybe even dull. The instructors barely noticed her. Her classmates sometimes teased her, calling her the shadow in the back row, or asking if she even knew what was happening in class. But Lyra didn't answer. She didn't need to. Everything was already in her mind. Outside the station, beyond the reinforced observation windows, the stars stretched infinitely, a glittering sea of possibilities and dangers. Somewhere in that darkness, predators watched. Not ordinary predators, not hunters of animals or small colonies. These were the Vraxian hunters, a species feared across many star systems for their intelligence, cruelty, and relentless pursuit of prey. Their ships moved silently, scanning for life signatures, analyzing patterns of behavior. And for reasons they could not yet explain, their sensors kept returning data that did not match reality whenever they looked at Lyra. Inside the hall, Lyra noticed subtle things most would miss. A drone hovering too close to a sensor array, a misaligned holographic projector in the corner, a flicker of the instructor's communication bracelet as he checked messages. To anyone else, these were inconsequential, unnoticed. To Lyra, each detail formed a puzzle, a pattern that connected to something larger, something that could threaten everyone in the academy. The lecture began. Instructor Tyrell, a veteran of countless planetary conflicts, started the session on strategic defense simulations. His voice was firm, commanding, but distracted. He knew, as did many of the station's officers, that something in the orbital sectors had shifted. Intelligence reports hinted at Vraxian movements, but the data was fragmented, almost meaningless. "Cadets," he said, "today we will simulate an ambush scenario. Pay attention because the real threats you may face won't announce themselves. They won't wait for you to be ready." Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. Her fingers rested lightly on the armrest of her chair, but her mind was already running calculations. Every enemy had a pattern. Every hunter, no matter how clever, left traces of thought in its movement. And humans had something no predator ever fully understood: unpredictability, imagination, and the ability to improvise. She ran the simulation in her mind, faster than the instructor could demonstrate it on the hollow screen. She saw multiple outcomes, branching paths, weak points in every ambush scenario. Around her, cadets were distracted by flashy holograms and voice commands, shouting responses to questions they barely thought through. Lyra, silent, mapped everything. She could see the students' reactions to different stimuli, their tendencies to panic, to overthink, or to freeze. She memorized patterns of behavior as if they were lines of code. Not for malicious reasons, but because one day she might have to use this knowledge to protect them and the station itself. A sudden vibration shook the floor lightly. Everyone paused, looking around. The sensors had picked up something, small, almost imperceptible. Lyra already knew what it was. A probe. Not a friendly probe, not one meant for observation by the Academy. A Vraxian probe, sleek and silent, cloaked in advanced camouflage technology. It had entered orbit moments ago and now drifted near the station's outer hull, scanning for weak points. Her mind raced. She did not panic. She did not alert anyone immediately. Instead, she calculated the probe's trajectory, the angles of its sensors, the timings it would use to send data back to the mothership. She could see the weaknesses in its design, the small delays in its communication relay. By adjusting a minor frequency in the station's own communication network, she could scramble its data feed. No alarms would go off, but the probe would record nothing of real value. Lyra leaned slightly to the side, keeping her eyes on the probe through the observation window. A faint flicker of light reflected from the hull of the station, a subtle signal, but enough for her to confirm her calculations. In mere minutes, she manipulated the station's minor subsystems with precision only she could achieve. The probe, which should have collected hours of intelligence, suddenly seemed lost, confused, unable to reconcile the data it was receiving. The predators would notice eventually, but by then, Lyra had given the station an invisible shield, a silent first line of defense that no one else even realized existed. The lecture continued as if nothing had happened. Cadets scrambled in simulations, debating the best response to ambushes, while Lyra's mind worked silently in the background. She imagined what the Vraxian hunters would do next. If they discovered their probe's failure, they would escalate. And humans, though far smaller and physically weaker, had one advantage predators often underestimated: cunning. Hours passed. In the dining hall, cadets chattered about classes, routines, and simulations. Lyra ate slowly, quietly observing the patterns of her peers, their tendencies, the alliances they formed, the rivalries that shaped their decisions. Even in small things, humans left predictable traces, and Lyra was learning every one of them. Later, she walked through the academy's corridors. Security drones glided silently along the walls, scanning for threats. The corridors smelled faintly of metal polish and recycled air. Lyra's ears picked up the subtlest of sounds: the slight buzz of a misaligned drone motor, the whisper of airflow from the external hull vents. She could sense movement before it happened, the way a cat anticipates the next step of a mouse. It was during this walk that she encountered the first physical test of her skill. A small, sharp drone, one of the Academy's automated surveillance units, moved strangely. Its programming seemed off, almost as if it had been tampered with remotely. Lyra noticed immediately. It wasn't a malfunction. Someone or something was trying to monitor the Academy's internal systems, and they were using a device disguised as one of their own. Without hesitation, Lyra reached for a control panel nearby. Her fingers flew across the interface, rerouting power, isolating circuits, and creating a feedback loop that forced the rogue drone to shut down. It tumbled silently to the floor, harmless, while the standard security drones resumed their patrols, oblivious. Lyra bent down, checked the device, and noted its design. Advanced, alien, Vraxian. By evening, the Academy's training simulations concluded. Lyra returned to her quarters, a modest room with minimal personal items. She opened her datapad, reviewing information on Vraxian tactics, their hunting patterns, and historical failures. Humans had survived encounters with them before, but usually by luck or overwhelming numbers. Lyra did not rely on luck. She relied on calculation, observation, and anticipation. Her mind was already preparing for the next day. She imagined the predators watching the station, calculating her, unaware that she had already predicted them. Her plan was simple but effective. Observe first, act only when necessary, and turn their own assumptions against them. Every misstep they made would be invisible to the others, but she would see it, exploit it, and protect everyone in her silent, unassuming way. Night fell on Cydonia Station. Outside, the stars glimmered, distant and cold. Somewhere out there, the Vraxian hunters plotted. They assumed the cadets were unprepared, inexperienced, and predictable. They did not notice the girl in the back row. They did not know that silence could be stronger than firepower, that observation could be sharper than any blade. Lyra lay in her cot, eyes open, thinking. She imagined the upcoming challenges, simulations that would test every skill she had learned, predators that would come with traps and deceptions, and the humans who depended unknowingly on her silent vigilance. Sleep would come eventually, but her mind never truly rested. She reviewed data, recalculated trajectories, and imagined contingencies for every conceivable threat. By the end of the night, one fact was certain: the predators would come, but they would not find an easy target. For the girl in the back row, quiet and unassuming, was already the first line of defense. Every trap they set, every probe they sent would fail. And the humans, who thought they were merely training for simulations, were unknowingly under the protection of someone who saw far more than anyone realized. As the first lights of Cydonia Station blinked awake, Lyra sat silently in her room, ready. The academy would continue as usual. Her classmates would chatter and laugh, unaware that the galaxy's most dangerous hunters had already been thwarted by someone they overlooked. And Lyra, quiet, calm, and vigilant, waited for the day the true challenge would arrive. because when it did, she would ensure that humanity would not just survive, but outsmart, outthink, and outlast every predator that dared to track her first. In the back row, silence was not weakness. It was a weapon. The morning on Cydonia Station arrived with the usual mechanical hum, the subtle vibrations of life in orbit around a barren planet. Cadets poured into the corridors, boots clicking on metal floors, hollow screens lighting faces as instructors called names and checked simulations. Lyra Dane moved quietly, unremarkable in appearance, but every step was measured, every glance deliberate. She noticed the smallest changes, a flicker in the security system, a drone that paused slightly too long in its patrol, a maintenance bot slightly off its programmed path. Most cadets ignored such details. They were busy practicing drills, chatting about theory, or arguing over strategy. To them, the Vraxian threat was a story told in intelligence briefings, something far away, something improbable. But for Lyra, it was real, immediate, and unavoidable. The probe from the previous day had been only a test. The predators were assessing the station, measuring defenses, searching for weaknesses, and she had already anticipated some of their moves. The first challenge came just before the morning assembly. A low-frequency alarm sounded briefly, almost unnoticeable to anyone distracted, signaling a breach attempt in one of the external observation bays. Cadets glanced nervously, instructors glanced at each other, but no one acted quickly. Lyra had already moved. She sprinted down the corridor, ignoring the curious glances of her classmates, and reached the bay before anyone else could react. Outside the reinforced glass, a sleek object floated near the station's hull. Its design was alien, dark, angular, and smooth, reflecting starlight like liquid metal. Lyra's eyes narrowed. This was no probe, this was reconnaissance, testing the station's response. Without hesitation, she accessed a nearby control panel, sending subtle pulses through the station's energy grid. The object shuddered slightly, its sensors recalibrating, unable to interpret the signals it received. A quiet thrill ran through her. Most people would panic at the sight of an alien vessel so close, so precise. But Lyra worked in silence. Observation was power. Action had to be calculated. She did not want to destroy it, not yet, but she needed to know its capabilities, its weaknesses. With careful manipulation, she caused its sensors to loop false data, making it believe the station was empty, unprepared, and vulnerable. Then, as silently as it had appeared, the object retreated, vanishing into the dark void outside the station's orbit. By the time the instructors realized something had happened, Lyra was back in the hall, sitting in her usual spot at the back row, adjusting her uniform as if nothing had occurred. Cadets whispered among themselves, noticing the flicker of activity but unsure what it meant. Lyra's silence had once again protected them, invisibly, perfectly. Later, in the simulation hall, the cadets participated in a defensive exercise designed to teach them how to respond to alien attacks. The instructor explained scenarios involving multiple simultaneous threats, ambushes from multiple angles, decoy signals, and unpredictable hazards. Most cadets relied on straightforward logic, respond to what they could see, follow standard protocols, and wait for orders. Lyra, however, saw beyond the simulation's parameters. She anticipated what the system could not account for, tracing every potential attack route, every hidden vulnerability. During the simulation, her strategies were unconventional. She gave subtle instructions that appeared simple or accidental, guiding her team to act without drawing attention. Cadets who had mocked her silent demeanor found themselves following her suggestions instinctively. And when the final scenario concluded, a simulated predator attack on the main command center, Lyra's team had minimized losses, outmaneuvered every threat, and secured the station's core systems. The instructors were astonished. They could not explain how a single cadet, one who rarely spoke or volunteered, had such profound control over the outcome. In the evening, the station's sensors detected something more worrying. Multiple small objects appeared beyond the outer hull, advanced cloaked drones, likely precursors to a larger assault. The predators were testing once more aggressively this time. Their probes had failed yesterday, but now they were trying coordinated attacks, seeking to measure human responses and adapt their strategies. Lyra moved through the hallways, noting the positions of every cadet, every security drone, every critical system. She calculated trajectories, predicted outcomes, and formulated contingency plans. With precise instructions, she rerouted power, shifted communications, and prepared defense protocols without the others realizing it. The cloaked drones approached, expecting hesitation, expecting confusion. Instead, they encountered a station that was ready, not because of automated systems or AI, but because of human ingenuity, guided by one silent observer who understood patterns better than any machine. A sudden alert flashed in her visor. One drone had breached the outer energy shield, moving toward the station's docking bay. Lyra acted swiftly. She sent a cascade of controlled pulses through the magnetic field surrounding the bay. The drone systems overloaded slightly, and it spun out of control, colliding gently with the station's hull and deactivating. No alarms were raised, no cadets harmed, yet the victory was complete. Even as she handled the immediate threat, her mind raced ahead. The predators would learn from this. They would adapt, they would escalate, and she needed to be ready. Humans were strong, clever, and resourceful, but they were not invincible. Survival required observation, preparation, and the ability to act when others could not. Lyra embodied all of these traits. By late night, the academy was quiet. Most cadets had retreated to their quarters, exhausted from simulations, training, and the subtle tension of the day. Lyra remained in the observation deck, studying the stars. Beyond the windows, alien ships might have lingered, scanning silently, evaluating, measuring. She imagined their thought processes, the calculations they ran, the assumptions they made. She could almost see their frustration, how no ordinary pattern applied to her, how her silence and unpredictability confounded them. Her thoughts were interrupted by a faint hum in the station's energy grid. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Lyra noticed immediately. Someone or something was probing the station's systems again. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but from anticipation. This was the real test, the kind that would push her skills to their limits. She followed the signal, tracing it through corridors, data ports, and maintenance conduits. It was clever but predictable. All predators, no matter how intelligent, left traces in the pursuit of their prey. Lyra isolated the source, a small, sleek device hidden behind a maintenance panel. Advanced, alien, undeniably Vraxian. She studied it carefully, analyzing the mechanisms, the signals, the algorithms. She could see how it predicted patterns, how it adapted, and how she could exploit it. With precise adjustments, she caused a feedback loop that rendered it useless, and it deactivated quietly, almost imperceptibly. No one else noticed. Cadets slept peacefully, instructors monitored routine systems, and the station remained calm. But Lyra knew the predators were learning. They would return more prepared, more cunning. And when they did, humanity would not be caught off guard, not if she could prevent it. As she returned to her quarters, Lyra reflected on the day. She had not spoken to anyone about her actions. She had not sought recognition. She did not need it. Her satisfaction came from knowing that the station, her friends, and the humans under her silent watch were safer because she had acted. She understood that true strength did not always roar. Sometimes it observed, calculated, and struck only when the moment was right. That night she lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what was coming. The predators would not stop. They would continue to test, to probe, to hunt. And humans, so far, small and underestimated, would have to rise to meet them. Lyra felt a quiet determination. The challenges ahead would not break her. They would sharpen her. They would prove what humans were capable of when guided by intelligence, courage, and silent resolve. Somewhere beyond the stars, Vraxian ships moved in the darkness. Their sensors might detect signals, their drones might scan, but none could truly see her. None could understand that the quiet girl in the back row was already preparing the humans for the trials to come. She was patient, vigilant, and calculating. And when the hunters realized how clever she was, it would be too late. Humanity would already have turned the tables. By the time morning arrived again, Lyra was at her usual spot in the lecture hall. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in every cadet, every instructor, every detail. She did not speak. She did not need to. Everything she had done and everything she would do would unfold silently, like a carefully planned strategy. The predators would strike again, but humans would survive. They would adapt. And Lyra, quiet, vigilant, and brilliant, would ensure they had the edge. In the back row, unseen, the future of humanity was already being written, one calculation, one observation, and one silent act of brilliance at a time. The station's lights flickered slightly, as if sensing the tension that had settled over Cydonia. Outside the observation windows, distant stars shimmered coldly, and the black void seemed endless. It was the calm before the storm. Lyra Dane walked through the corridors with the same quiet, deliberate steps she always took, but her mind was anything but calm. She had been expecting escalation. The Vraxian hunters were persistent. Their probes had failed, their initial attacks thwarted, and their drones destroyed or deactivated. But she knew they would not give up. They were clever, patient, and cruel. And now she realized they were bringing something new, something far more dangerous. The first sign came during routine security checks. A sensor panel in one of the lower docking bays registered a reading that made her pause. It was alive, not a drone, not a mechanical device. Something organic, moving with speed too fast for human perception. It had entered the outer perimeter. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She recognized the signature immediately. Vraxian bioengineered hunters. They had been modified to track life signs, predict human reactions, and even anticipate tactical decisions. The station's alarms remained silent. Lyra did not panic. She had expected this. She sprinted down the corridors, taking shortcuts only she knew. She reached the bay in seconds. The creatures were already inside, their bodies sleek and dark, their eyes glowing faintly with intelligence. They moved silently but with purpose, scanning, calculating. One of them froze as it detected her, its head tilting slightly as if recognizing a challenge. Lyra did not hesitate. Using a combination of the station's magnetic locks and rerouted gravity fields, she corralled the creatures into a containment area. They were fast, but their patterns were predictable. She had studied their species, their bioengineering, their hunting tendencies. For every strike they made, she anticipated the next, creating traps and safe zones that guided them exactly where she wanted. Meanwhile, the cadets were unaware of the real threat. They were in the training halls, participating in exercises designed to simulate attacks from alien species. Lyra moved like a ghost, protecting them without their knowledge. Every decision she made was silent, precise, calculated. The predators could not understand this level of subtlety. They expected fear, chaos, hesitation. What they did not expect was strategy, patience, and human ingenuity. The creatures tested her. One lunged suddenly, faster than the eye could follow. Lyra triggered an emergency pulse from the station's power grid. It sent a localized electromagnetic surge, stunning the creature long enough for her to close the magnetic gates behind it. Another tried to flank her through a maintenance shaft, but she had anticipated the route and sealed it remotely. Each action she took was deliberate, almost invisible, like a chess master moving pieces without the board being noticed by the opponent. By the time the instructors and security officers arrived, the creatures were contained. Lyra stood calmly in the back of the bay, breathing steadily as if nothing had happened. The officers stared in shock. How did you do this?" one of them asked. Lyra simply shook her head. No explanation was needed. The station had been protected. The cadets were safe, and that was enough. The Vraxian hunters, however, did not stop. They analyzed every failure, every mistake they had made, and adapted. Their next move was more aggressive. Instead of probes or small attacks, they deployed multiple biohunters, coordinating them with cloaked drones in a synchronized assault. Their goal was clear: eliminate human leadership, disrupt the station, and instill fear. Lyra anticipated this escalation. She had been preparing. She created multiple layers of traps using the station systems, gravity wells, energy pulses, and communication interference. The corridors were mapped in her mind, every possible hiding spot noted, every escape route calculated. She would not only survive this attack, she would control it. The assault began at dusk. Sensors lit up with readings that indicated movement near the docking bay, maintenance shafts, and outer hull vents. Lyra moved swiftly, coordinating with automated systems, guiding cadets who had unknowingly followed her subtle signals. One biohunter attempted to breach the main control room, but she redirected it into a sealed corridor using gravity field manipulation. Another tried to reach the communications hub, but was trapped by energy pulses that cut off its path. Every time a predator thought it had an advantage, Lyra turned it against them. Cloaked drones were lured into zones where magnetic interference caused them to collide or become immobilized. Biohunters, relying on their ability to predict human movement, found themselves caught in loops they could not escape. Lyra's silent calculations outpaced them, her mind moving faster than any machine, faster than their instincts. Cadets who witnessed the chaos finally realized what was happening. They saw the creatures, the drones, and the systems reacting in perfect harmony, and they understood that someone had anticipated everything. Whispers spread through the halls. She knew everything. Lyra did not respond. She focused, guiding the humans, controlling the battlefield without a single word. Hours passed. The predators adjusted, tried new strategies, but every move was met with a counter. Lyra's calm was unbreakable. She manipulated energy fields to create barriers, rerouted power to temporarily blind sensors, and used the station's automated systems to her advantage. Each tactic was simple, yet incredibly effective. It was not brute force that won battles, but intelligence, anticipation, and adaptability, the very traits that defined humanity. Finally, after a long and exhausting struggle, the Vraxian hunters retreated. Their biohunters disabled, their drones captured or neutralized, they pulled back into orbit, calculating their next move. Lyra watched from the observation deck, her eyes steady, her mind already anticipating future strategies. Humanity had survived and the station was intact. Cadets gathered afterward, exhausted, shaken, and amazed. They whispered about Lyra's actions, piecing together what must have happened. They understood, for the first time, that human intelligence was a weapon more powerful than alien technology, more unpredictable than any algorithm. She had not only protected them, but had outsmarted creatures designed to hunt the cleverest prey in the galaxy. The instructors approached her cautiously, unsure whether to praise or question. "Cadet Dane," one said, voice full of awe, "how did you—" Lyra only shook her head, her expression calm. "It's what humans do," she said softly. "We survive, we adapt, we fight when necessary." Later in her quarters, she reflected on the day. She had not acted for recognition or glory. Every move had been calculated to protect others, to ensure survival. She thought of the predators and how they had underestimated humans, our unpredictability, our ingenuity, our resilience. They had assumed weakness, and in doing so, they had failed. Lyra's mind did not rest. She reviewed every encounter, every movement of the creatures, and every response of the station systems. She noted what worked, what could be improved, and what might fail next time. The predators would return, she knew, more prepared, more cunning, and more dangerous. But humanity, guided by intelligence and courage, would be ready. Night fell on Cydonia Station. The stars outside glimmered like distant eyes, silent observers of the struggle. Lyra stood at the observation deck, looking into the void, imagining the next encounter. Somewhere out there, the Vraxian hunters were planning, analyzing, and learning. But they did not yet understand that humans were not just prey. Humans were thinkers, creators, and fighters in ways no predator could predict. Lyra sat quietly, back in her usual spot, contemplating the lessons of the day. Every predator, every challenge, every threat revealed something about humanity's strength. Not brute force, not weapons, not even sheer numbers, though humans had those too, but something more profound: strategy, observation, and the courage to act when no one else could. As she closed her eyes for a short rest, she envisioned the next battle. The predators would come again, but she would be ready. She would anticipate, adapt, and counter every move. The cadets, though unaware of the full scope, would follow her guidance. And together, humans would prove that intelligence, courage, and silent brilliance could overcome even the deadliest threats the galaxy could offer. In the back row, as always, she remained quiet. She remained vigilant. And she remained human, unpredictable, clever, and unbreakable. The station shuddered as if it could sense the storm approaching. Beyond the reinforced hull, the void of space seemed almost alive, cold, and endless. Somewhere far out, Vraxian ships gathered in formation. Their lights flickered like distant predators preparing to strike. The humans of Cydonia Station went about their routines, unaware of the full scale of the attack that was about to descend upon them. All except one. Lyra Dane stood quietly in the observation deck, her eyes scanning every point of the station, every corridor, every approach vector. Her mind worked faster than any machine, calculating probabilities, predicting the enemy's tactics, and planning counters before the predators even thought of them. She had anticipated this day. The Vraxian hunters had escalated before, but now they brought their full force, a coordinated assault meant to break the humans and prove that no prey could outsmart them. The first wave hit without warning. Cloaked assault ships, faster and more advanced than anything the station had seen before, appeared in orbit. They unleashed biohunters onto the outer hull, their claws scraping the metal surface as they attempted to breach entry points. Sensors blared in the command room as alarms rang through the corridors, waking cadets and staff from the false calm of the morning. Most humans panicked. They were trained, yes, but the speed and precision of the attack overwhelmed instinct. All except the ones following Lyra's subtle guidance. She moved silently through the command deck, issuing commands without words, sending signals to cadets who understood her gestures and patterns. They activated emergency protocols, sealed off vulnerable sections, and redirected station power to reinforce shields. A biohunter lunged toward a docking bay, its claws sparking against the metal as it tried to pry open the doors. Lyra activated a gravity field she had prepared days before, forcing the creature to lose balance and slide along the hull. The cadets reinforced the doors behind it, trapping it outside where it clawed uselessly against the surface. One by one, predators found themselves funneled into zones designed specifically to neutralize them, all under Lyra's silent command. The Vraxian ships did not stop. They released drones that moved faster than light sensors could track, swarming toward the station's hull like a storm. Lyra's mind raced. She triggered a series of energy pulses that created interference, causing drones to miscalculate trajectories. Several collided with one another, others crashed into asteroid debris Lyra had manipulated remotely. The predators had planned for speed, for firepower, for overwhelming the humans, but not for a mind that anticipated every calculation and every reaction. Cadets followed her signals, trusting her instincts even though they barely understood them. A small group worked to repair damaged systems while others monitored the approaching biohunters. Lyra moved between stations silently, orchestrating the defense as if she were the conductor of an invisible symphony. Every pulse, every barrier, every trap was calculated to maximize efficiency while minimizing risk to humans. The Vraxian leaders, observing through sensors, grew frustrated. They had underestimated the humans' adaptability. Each attempt to break through was countered before it could succeed. Their own creatures faltered under the strategies Lyra had implemented. They attempted to adapt, but Lyra had already accounted for likely adjustments. Her mind moved faster than their analysis systems. In the docking bay, a group of biohunters coordinated an attack on the main reactor. Lyra had anticipated this route. Using a combination of force fields and magnetic restraints, she diverted them into containment corridors. The creatures thrashed and roared, but every movement had been predicted. Cadets assisted, activating auxiliary systems that immobilized the hunters without harm to themselves. Meanwhile, drones attempted to infiltrate the communication array. Lyra activated a countermeasure she had secretly installed, a series of reflective energy pulses that confused the drones' sensors, causing them to transmit false readings back to their mothership. The predators believed their data was accurate, but every calculation was flawed. Humanity's ingenuity turned the hunters' own technology against them. Hours passed. The assault continued, relentless but predictable to Lyra. She guided every action, from the smallest cadet response to the activation of the station's largest defense systems. The Vraxian hunters grew desperate. Their biohunters exhausted, their drones failing, and their ships unable to breach the station's outer defenses, they attempted a final, concentrated strike at the main control room. Lyra anticipated this. She had created one last defensive measure, a combination of energy shields, magnetic fields, and rerouted power conduits designed to create confusion and immobilize attackers. The predators struck. The shields activated, bending light, redirecting energy, and forcing ships into collision courses with debris fields Lyra had manipulated. Biohunters found themselves trapped in zones that nullified their strength, their attacks futile. Drones misfired, systems overloaded, and the station emerged unscathed. Silence followed. The predators retreated, calculating, adapting, but defeated for now. The humans of Cydonia Station stared in awe at the aftermath. Systems were damaged but operational. Biohunters were neutralized, the threat had been repelled, and yet no one fully understood how it had been accomplished. Lyra stood quietly in the back row of the observation deck, calm as ever. Cadets approached her hesitantly. Cadet Dane, you did all this? One asked, voice trembling. Lyra only shook her head. We did it, she said softly. Humans do this together. Intelligence, courage, cooperation, that is what makes us strong. The cadets looked at her in disbelief. They had fought, yes, but it was Lyra's foresight, her silent calculations, her anticipation of every predator move that had allowed them to survive. The instructors nodded, finally understanding that human ingenuity was not just about technology or strength. It was about thinking, observing, predicting, and acting at the right moment. The Vraxian hunters retreated into the void, their pride wounded, their calculations flawed. They would return, perhaps, but now they knew humans were far more dangerous than they had imagined. Small, underestimated, and seemingly fragile, humans could outthink, outmaneuver, and survive even the deadliest predators in the galaxy. Lyra watched the stars from the observation deck, her mind calm, calculating, already preparing for the next threat. Somewhere beyond the blackness, the predators were regrouping. They would return, testing, probing, hunting again. And humanity, guided by intelligence, courage, and silent brilliance, would be ready. The cadets, inspired by the events, began to understand a new truth. It was not firepower alone that ensured survival, nor numbers, nor armor. It was thinking, observing, adapting, and acting decisively. And one person, even silent and unassuming, could guide the many to victory. In the quiet of the station, as systems hummed and lights flickered, Lyra sat in her usual place. The battle was won, but the war for survival continued. She knew the Vraxian hunters would return, smarter, more cunning, but she also knew humanity's greatest strength was not in what they built, but in what they thought. Her mind replayed the battle in patterns, calculating improvements, predicting future threats. Each cadet, each system, each obstacle was already accounted for. Lyra's silence was her shield, her strategy, her weapon. The predators had tracked her first, but humans had won. And that was the essence of what it meant to be human, clever, adaptable, and unbroken. As the station settled into calm once more, Lyra allowed herself a small, rare smile. Humanity had survived another encounter with the galaxy's deadliest hunters. Not by luck, not by brute strength, but by intelligence, observation, and courage. And she, silent and vigilant, had ensured that humans would not just survive, but thrive. The stars outside twinkled, distant and eternal. Somewhere beyond, the predators calculated and planned, unaware that their prey had already learned, adapted, and outsmarted them. Cydonia Station remained safe, its humans inspired, and its quiet protector at the back row ready for whatever came next. In the back row, she remained silent, but she was not powerless, she was ready. And humanity, guided by her brilliance, had shown the galaxy that even the quietest observer could change the outcome of a battle, and that intelligence, courage, and strategy were the greatest weapons of all.